I just had my first ever real life race, and I promise you're never gonna believe the result. Okay, there might have been a spin or two here and there, but we'll come back to that in a second. Last month, you guys saw me drive this, my Volkswagen Golf R32 out at Calabogie Motorsports Park for the very first time. And two things happened. Number one, I really liked it. And number two, my exhaust fell off. And to be honest with you, it's still falling off. I haven't actually fixed it just yet. So if I'm not gonna drive my R32 around, I need something to drive. This is a Mazda MX-5. Let me tell you about it.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's slow down a sec. I showed you this last time. I'm trying to get here to do actual racing, but right now, I'm all the way over here in intermediate. So I still have a lot of work to do. And that's when I found these guys, Tooth Autosport. Tooth is a real-life racing team. They go to some of the biggest events all over Canada and the US. And they're home to some super talented drivers. They race a whole bunch of cool stuff like TCR cars, TCA cars, and even some other spicy things as well. And this is their team principal, Travis, and he let me take out their MX-5 to get some more seat time. I'm still trying to learn this massive circuit. It's over 5 kilometers long. It has 20 corners. So even though I've been here before, I'm still learning my way around. And that's why we played a little bit of Follow the Leader.
Apex here. Stay straight. Yeah. Lift. In. Back on.
Follow the Leader is honestly one of the best ways to learn a new racing circuit because you're just following the person in front, probably in a similar car, in this case, another MX-5, and you can see things like their braking point, when they're turning in. You can usually hear when they're getting on the gas and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's a super great tool to learn this circuit. After all of that, though, I was able to put in my fastest lap time, which was a 2 minutes 50, which isn't fast, but considering it was my first time ever driving a manual on a track and my first time ever driving a Mazda MX-5, it's not bad. Don't even think for a second, though, that we stopped there because Tooth then hooked me up with one of their driving instructors. This is Francis. For example, we spent some time driving around the parking lot and just focusing on downshifting and really mastering those. It's something you don't really think about when you're driving on the public road, but on a racetrack, a downshift at the right time and being smooth with it is super important.
Clutch in, rem, and then like half a second, and then you drop the clutch, okay?
Yep.
And so all of this you want to kind of compress, make sure that when you rev up, and then you do the clutch release, you still benefit from the elevated rev.
And after a little bit of time, I got my downshifts to be a little bit smoother, and then we actually took the MX-5 onto the public street. It's a road car after all.
We are driving this car on the road.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Francis wanted to take this opportunity to teach me exactly how big this Mazda MX-5 was, and this is something you can practice on the road and implement on the racetrack in the future. You can focus on racing lines on the open road by just using the width of a lane, tracking out, hitting an apex, tracking out again, and things like that.
In, balance the car, accelerate to the exit. Nice.
It might sound super basic, but these are the type of things that you desperately need when you're on a real-life race circuit. We eventually drove back to Calabogie Motorsports Park and took the MX-5 onto the circuit to implement the things that we were just working on, making sure we're hitting the right lines and making sure our downshifts are nice and buttery smooth. We weren't focusing on speed at all, just making sure everything was smooth because the speed can come later. And because of that, our fastest lap time actually dropped down to a 2 minutes 56. And unfortunately, I didn't actually have any time to better my lap time because the rain started coming down a little bit. And that gave us an excuse to practice something else. Driving a rear-wheel drive car with no driving aids on a wet race circuit. Again, something I've never done before. My lack of experience here definitely showed. I was missing some braking points, running wide, and kind of going back to old habits, but things actually got worse than that. First ever time spinning a race car on a race circuit. Yeah, let's try to avoid that in the future, but it was actually good news.
As you can probably tell, I've been doing a lot of racing over the past little while, and I think it's time for our first upgrade. This is the helmet that I've been using ever since I started racing, and it's been great. It's actually a motorcycle helmet that I purchased 5 years ago or so when I first planned on getting my motorcycle license. But there's one problem with it. If I'm actually gonna go and enter proper races, I'm not allowed to use this. Every single racing league out there has different requirements for gear that you have to wear. If you're in North America, it's usually SA rated gear, and if you're in Europe, it's FIA rated gear. And a motorcycle helmet is rated for neither of those. So if I'm gonna do proper races, this, as much as I like it, has to go. And that's why I purchased this. I'm aware I look like a burglar right now, but I need to try some helmets on.
I ended up going for this really nice Stilo helmet. It was definitely a little bit more expensive than I thought it would be, but it's super nice. It's got a built-in radio. I love this thing.
This is officially my new helmet. Yay.
After that, I had to get some other racing gear so I could actually compete in the series. For example, some fireproof boots. I went for like this neck restraint system, some fireproof gloves, and a proper racing suit. I ended up choosing Alpine Stars for most of my gear just because it was so readily available and fairly budget friendly. It's all kind of like entry-level stuff, nothing super fancy, but it's really comfortable and I really like it.
Now that I've got my new gear, we can head back to the circuit and work on this again. I'm still an intermediate, but I'm trying to get intermediate green solo, which basically means I can drive around alone. But if I'm gonna do that, I need to pass a test. How hard could it be?
And you know how I said spinning out in the rain last time was actually a good thing? Well, when it was time for my assessment, the rain was coming down again. Just my luck. For the actual assessment though, you're teamed up with one of the driving instructors from Calabogie Motorsports Park. They basically just sit next to you and analyze what you're doing. It's not so much about driving fast, but more so showing you kind of know what you're doing and you're a safe driver. And with all the rain coming down, I wasn't going to be driving quickly at all, but I was able to do enough and show enough to the Calabogie Motorsports Park instructor that I kind of knew what I was doing. And I got my sign off.
Thank you.
I'll do the necessary paperwork.
Appreciate it. I got the sign off, baby.
With the sign-off completed, I can enter my first race now, but here's what makes it really cool. After I posted my first video last month, the guys from Calabogie Motorsports Park actually saw that video and decided to sponsor me for my first race and let me drive this, the Power Sports Garage Mazda MX-5 spec race car.
So although yes, this is a Mazda MX-5, it's kind of nothing like the other one I was driving. This is a proper race car. Say goodbye to the airbags and say hello to a roll cage. Spec Miatas are built to compete in, well, a spec racing series. In theory, all of the cars should have exactly the same horsepower, same weight, same-ish suspension, and same setup. But to make things safer, Calabogie Motorsports Park actually teamed me up with an instructor for the race.
A little bit.
Hello, James! Before the race, though, and before the actual qualifying stuff, we got a couple of practice laps in because it was my first ever time driving a spec Miata. And can I just say right out of the gate, these are so much fun to drive. Anyways, with James by my side, we were able to put in a lap time of a 2:35, which was a massive improvement. But could we go even faster?
He wants me to build confidence.
Should be faster without me in the car, not slower.
Yeah. Keep it over the fence.
That's usually the goal.
And with those words of encouragement and trying to keep it out of the fence, I went out back on the race circuit all by myself and I tried to get some of my confidence built up. And well, with the knowledge I got from James, Francis, and everybody who's helped me along the journey already, I was able to put in a 2:34 all by myself on the circuit, which was super cool and super satisfying. And what's crazy is I'm sitting here today recording this voiceover and I'm looking at this footage and I'm going, oh, I messed up there. I could go even faster than that. So we hit the circuit for qualifying. James in the passenger seat and myself behind the wheel. We have 4 laps to set the best lap time we can. And it was going pretty well. I was actually sliding the MX-5 through some of the corners. It was super cool. But overall, I think my nerves actually got to me. This being my first ever race and all, and I wasn't able to do the same lap time. This time, a 2:36 in qualifying.
And just like that, qualifying is over. We qualified qualified 13th overall and second in our class, which I felt was actually pretty good considering it was my first time ever driving the car. But now we've got to see what we can do in the actual race.
So here we go, my first ever real-life car race behind the wheel of a Mazda MX-5 spec car. Away we go, starting from 13th position, second position in class, through corner 1, no incidents. To this point though in the video, I should explain what this actual race is. This is a GT race. The point of a GT race is kind of like level 1 of racing a real life car. And instead of being able to go for overtakes wherever you want on the circuit, you actually need to give point buys to the car behind you, essentially allowing them to pass, whether it be on the left or on the right hand side. What that means though is nobody can just send it up the inside and cause a huge pileup and smash into your door. If somebody's gonna overtake, the car in front actually needs to allow them. It basically means the race is a whole lot safer. It's level 1 of racing. In the future, I'll be doing proper races with door-to-door racing and all sorts of stuff like that, but for my first ever race, this was a great way to start. And honestly, we just kind of settled into the race. The car in first place pulled away. He was doing crazy lap time. And the car behind me, well, I pulled away from them, actually. So I was kind of left in my own little bubble in second place, and I just put in lap after lap after lap. Unfortunately though, around minute 20 of the 30-minute race, I started to get super hot in the car and I started to experience some fatigue, which actually caused my lap times to drop. With pressure building from behind though, we put head down and keep on going. Fortunately for us though, we had a big enough gap. We were able to hold P2. There's the checkered flag and we bring it home in second place in our very first race. And that's the story of my first ever car race. There's a bunch more stuff coming soon. I'll see you then.